Growing up, my favorite handheld was the Game Boy Advance. It may not be the most iconic out of all the Game Boy releases, but it's the most nostalgic to me, the most comfortable, the one that I have the most memories with when I think back to playing those games. And here we are 23 years later after its release. I spent $300 to mod the Game Boy Advance to match another one of my childhood favorites growing up, my Ice Blue Nintendo 64. It was definitely a fun little project. I always find I get nostalgic after the holidays, so I'll bring you guys through all the mods today, showing off my ultimate Ice Blue N64 themed $300 Game Boy Advance. So first up is the Game Boy Advance itself. I found this one on eBay for a little over $160, which already has the full shell swap to this nice translucent blue shell to match the Ice Blue N64, and it was already modded with a new IPS V5 screen upgrade from high-speed IDO. And you may think 160 is a lot for a 23-year-old handheld, but finding a pre-modded one like this at that price is actually a pretty good deal when you check other listings out there. Now, as you can see, one of the cool things about this V5 screen in particular, and why these screen upgrade mods are a necessity at this point, is because the new screen is extremely better looking. Not only is it brighter, and if you remember, the original GBA wasn't even backlit if you remember those dark ages, it's adjustable, the resolution is nearly tripled, and it has more customization options in the menus. For a visual side-by-side comparison for you guys of the OEM screen that we used to have to deal with, versus the modern screen updates, it's literally night and day. The resolution upgrade's immediately noticeable, it's laminated, there's more color and contrast. The brightness is obvious as well. It really does wonders when it comes to making a GBA more similar to handhelds we have out there today. And the screen itself is $65 on Handheld Legends as it is, so again, about $160 for this unit I felt was a pretty good deal. And I didn't have to install it myself, even though it's just a drop-in ready mod. This model screen actually has the ability to be a touchscreen to navigate the brightness, although it doesn't seem the eBay seller actually soldered the touch sensor to make that possible. But there are still other ways to adjust the settings. Holding down the select and either left or right trigger lets you adjust the brightness on the fly, but also holding down select and both triggers at the same time is what brings up the menu. Here you can pick between your brightness levels from 15 different ones, so if you want to dim it if you're playing at night or something, you don't need that full brightness level. Lowering it also helps save battery. There's different color modes, which adds different color palettes to the screen. So if that's there, if you want to replicate like the old look of the DMG Game Boy, for example. Then you have these pixel effects, which is pretty interesting because it gives that more original LCD look with the retro pixel overlay that it now has. And there's a frame blending option as well for those older Game Boy games that weren't programmed to be played on a better screen like this to avoid visual tearing. So honestly, just adding an upgraded and modern screen really transforms the entire look of not only the console itself, but now every single thing you're playing on it. I said it before as a joke, but it is literally a night and day's difference. But that's not all. Now the next mod was a super simple one that really adds to the modernizing of the console, and that was by way of ditching AA batteries. This can now be charged with an internal rechargeable lithium battery pack over USB-C. I picked this one up on Amazon for $35. It's a 1500 mAh battery pack with its own PCB that is drop-in ready again, letting me recharge the GPA instead of swapping out batteries like we used to have to do. It's made to size and fits directly into the battery slot already, and this shell and a lot of the newer ones on the market are already slightly modified inside to accommodate a battery pack, so I didn't have to do anything here. The only thing I now needed to do to make this a logical upgrade was buy a battery cover shell that had the USB-C cutout. Now, sure, I could have done this myself with a drill, but why make it janky and chance messing it up when these can be had for only $2? This way, now it's perfectly machined to fit the USB-C port, and it matches the entire rest of the shell since it's from the same company and manufacturer, making it seem like this was just OEM from the beginning, but it wasn't. Now for the real facelift. Opening this up and swapping out the stock light gray buttons for our N64 button pack is really what makes this project come to life. The N64 pack from Retro6 on Handheld Legends was only $9, although I did pick up some other buttons on the site to help match it a bit better overall, because as you'll see in a second, I wanted this to closely match my Ice Blue controller as possible. So for about $15, I did that. Just things like, adding the red rubber select buttons and different colored side grips that were included in the $9 pack. And then just like that, you could see it really start to take on a whole new look versus the light gray buttons. Sure, the light gray may have complemented the blue shell a bit more, but the goal here is to match the N64 Ice Blue theme. Now, the one real visual aspect that's missing from our GBA are the 4 yellow arrow buttons, known as the C buttons. Sure, the joystick here doesn't really translate to our current handheld. I just felt that the C buttons here are more of an iconic design to the controller overall, so I had a fun little remedy for that. My son has a pack of hundreds of different size googly eyes because he's 2 and putting eyes on things is hilarious. So I got 4 of the smallest eyes I could find and spray painted them yellow. These obviously won't have any real purpose other than just adding to the aesthetics. So I added them right above the speaker grill with the adhesive bottom to the googly eyes so they'll stay in place but can be removed if I change my mind or come up with a better solution down the road. I don't know, it works for the time being, but let me know what you guys think if you have any other better ideas that ties it all together. And then wrapping up the visuals, since our IPS V5 screen is already laminated with the screen and glass being one piece, I did see a $5 glass lens with the Nintendo 64 logo and branding to replace the Game Boy Advance logo. I just have this placed right on top of the screen, so this too can be removed or replaced down the road, but for only $5 to have that official branding on there, I just had to do it. And after about a half hour and $60 later of mods and visual upgrades, I can say we have a damn near perfect reimagined Game Boy Advance to match my Ice Blue N64. The yellow googly eyes for the 4C buttons, our A and B is color matched despite the button placement being swapped on the GBA. Our red rubber start button matches the center red start button on the controller. The dark gray D-pads are a perfect match, as well as our gray left and right triggers. So visually, I really love how this looks, and I think it's as close as I'm gonna get to a one-to-one rendition of turning a handheld, especially as it looked before, into the iconic theme and design of the Ice Blue N64 controller. Now, I did slightly mess up on one part, and if you have a keen eye, you may have noticed what I'm talking about. But under the lens, there's a slight mark from where I was taking off the protective film. Just from my nail removing the film, it left a little smudge to the adhesive. It's not noticeable at all when the screen is actually on, but it does bother me. It was only $5, so I may just pick up a new one and use tweezers to remove it instead of my nail, which created the smudge. But it's just the visual novelty here. It's not doing anything more than that, and it's just sitting on the screen. It's not even really supposed to be doing that, because our laminated screen unit and the lens are one piece. This was actually a mod for older screen kits where you needed both a lens and a screen separately. So this is just sitting on the all-in-one unit. Then lastly today, if you've been adding up the cost as we go, you may be wondering where that remaining $80 went, and that's to the Easy Flash Omega Definitive Edition game cart. This lets you play ROMs in pretty much any game you want from the entire Game Boy library, all on your device without having to swap out cartridges each time you want to play a new game. It's the same size as the regular GBA cart, so it fits perfectly inside, and after getting it flashed and set up to be used, I now have hundreds upon hundreds of games to pick from. Since most titles were anywhere from about 4 megabytes to 16 megabytes, you can fit thousands of games onto this and play whatever you're in the mood for, whether it's games you loved growing up or games you never got to experience. This definitive edition model has some pretty cool perks over its competitors as well, like it drawing less battery overall, has built-in rumble support, so if you remember like Pokemon Pinball, this will vibrate on its own without needing batteries, allows for video playback from watching TV shows and movies that they released back in the day. It can be used on the Nintendo DS and supports GBA to DS link transfer, has the ability to load cheats. It's a really, really cool mod that completely lets you play whatever you want, whenever you want. I mentioned before loading up cheats in your games, and with the built-in menu you can change a bunch of things like enabling those right there. There's things like display settings where you can view frame rates, and what's really useful are save states, allowing you to immediately save your game on the spot and then load directly back into that save the next time you play without needing to actually save in the actual game itself. I know it can get kind of dicey when it comes to the discussion of, adding ROMs onto a cartridge like this and the whole ROM, debate really. But you have to remember, a lot of these original games have been discontinued for at least 15 years now, even more dating back to the original Game Boy games 25, 30 plus years ago. So the fact that there's still an archive and a giant library of games out there that we have access to, of course, you don't have to download them, but it's really cool that we still do have those ROMs available where we can put onto one cartridge and have literally thousands and thousands and pretty much the entire Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance library on one single cartridge instead of swapping them all out. And you also have other added benefits, like it still has Rumble support, like I was saying. You can watch videos on it with some of the Game Boy video players. It's not as taxing on the battery as other of these cartridges are. It's just a really cool pickup if you are, big into collecting and you have a lot of these games you want to put on one cartridge. This definitely gets the job done. And speaking of getting the job done, I really think the overall theme here of an Ice Blue N64 controller has been accomplished. Almost a one-to-one, I'd say, but really, I just love the way it looks. For $300, the ultimate Ice Blue N64 themed GBA has come to life. Hey guys, that'll wrap it up for this one. Hope you all enjoyed. I'll put all the relevant links to some of the mods and parts that I use for this in the description down below so you can check it out. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up to show your support. Feel free to follow me on all socials at randomfrankp. And lastly, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Hope you all enjoyed. Have a good day.